All right, welcome back for another episode of Dollar Bin Digging. This is the video and article that I do for comicbookinvest.com where I talk about those cheap books that are still tucked away in those discount boxes, those dollar bins that you might find based off of things going on in the comics or the news, movies, TV, etc. Just things that come to mind that I think are worth your time to go and hunt for in sort of a scavenger hunt kind of feel. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see this week's selection of books, just hang on for a second after the intro, and I will be right back. All right, so for this week, we are going to start off with the comics. So these are some new releases that came out this week that had some characters that popped up that we can still dig out their first appearances for in various books tucked away in those cheap bins, those dollar boxes, etc. First up, we're going to start off with a few DC books this week because, that's what kind of most of the stuff I read this week. But with that, our first book is going to be Batman and Robin 27. I know, too many Batman and Robin titles these days, but still lots going on here with a lot of classic villains showing up in this series with Bruce and Damian. But also, we can get some ones that we don't see very often, like our man right here, the ventriloquist. That's right, Andrew Wesker. He's one you haven't seen all that often. We did see Scarface kind of doing his own thing in that Batman Dark Pattern series, but here we go, the ventriloquist. He has a first that is pretty well known these days. It is worth a few bucks, but still, that doesn't mean you can't look for it and look for it for cheap. And that is Detective Comics number 583. And yes, this classic Mike Mignola cover has been homaged. This thing got hot for a little bit, and it still has a little bit of value there. And it is the very first appearance of the ventriloquist here inside this book. So this one, as I said, it's a little bit pricier, but it's still worth knowing and being aware of because, maybe you find it for like $5 or even $10 in a box. Meanwhile, this thing has been selling for 25 to 30 lately, with asking prices being around that $20 mark, depending on condition, obviously. So again, a book to know, a book to be aware of when you're digging in those boxes. There's a ton of filler detective issues, so it's good to know the ones that stand out from the pack that are worth a few dollars more. So this being one of them, that first ventriloquist. Now, also inside this book, they brought a character back that it really isn't comic, doesn't have a long history, I should say, with the comics, as she was first introduced in the movies, and that is this tiny little cameo and reference here to Dr. Chase Meridian. If that name sounds familiar, that was Nicole Kidman's character in the I guess the third Batman movie. That's right, it was the Joel Schumacher one with the Riddler and Two-Face and Val Kilmer. Oh, that was a interesting one. That was an interesting movie. But her character was introduced in that movie, and she subsequently found her way over the decades into the comics. First off, she showed up right away with the adaptation, obviously. So if you go to the Batman Forever Prestige format, there's also a regular edition as well. This is from June of 95. You can find her first appearance, obviously, inside this because there she go. And they even try to make her look like Nicole Kidman, I think, inside this book because, that's who played her. But there you go. So that's technically her first appearance because, it was a character. She showed up in the movies first. Movie adaptation makes sense. This thing can be sold for $5 to $25, as you can see here with some recent sales. Meanwhile, most listings are really right around that $5-6 mark. I don't know what that $25 was for, but hey, somebody paid it. But as you can see here, there is a regular edition as well as this prestige format. So whichever one you find, it could be worth your time to pick it up if you're interested in Dr. Chase Meridian. Now, apart from that, she did show up later in continuity because this is a movie adaptation after all. This doesn't take place in the regular DC continuity, but if you're looking for her in continuity, you got to look for this weird $10 prestige, like big, thick 100-pager special. And that's right, this Legends of the Dark Knight 100-page super spectacular issue 4 from 2014 is where you're going to get her showing up in continuity, getting manhandled here a little bit by the Riddler. She has a whole storyline here with Bruce inside one of these anthology stories, but this is the book where she's actually worked into DC continuity. And this thing, again, it's not very pricey. You can find it out there selling for $4 to $12. Asking prices anywhere from 5 to 10. And remember, this is a 100-pager, and the cover price is $9.99. So finding for anything under $10 is actually a discount. So keep that in mind as well. With that, that's our first little book for the week that we're going to talk about. Our next one is still going to be in the Batman side of things, but it's going to go over to Poison Ivy with her annual. I actually enjoyed this annual, this one-shot story. I'm not a regular Poison Ivy reader. I don't know what's going on in her regular title, but reading this annual, it had a very Swamp Thing kind of vibe. Like Poison Ivy was in there, but it was told as almost like a flashback kind of story that was being told, almost like a myth even about you know, olden times, if you will. And inside this, we have the Tree of Knowledge, also known as Turu, inside this book. So Pamela Isley goes, finds Turu, and he goes and tells her this tale of the Lady in the Lake, or a version of the Lady in the Lake, and kind of a King Arthur kind of storyline. It's pretty cool. I enjoyed it. Yeah, the art was a little so-so on the inside, but it wasn't terrible. And it told an interesting story. I thought it was worth a read this week. But the character of Turu goes back to those Swamp Thing books that I'm referencing. And that's the Swamp Thing number 89 from August of 1989, where we had the whole Parliament of Trees and you had all these crazy ideas. So with that, that is when we got our first Turu. As you can see here, this is Turu. And then there was a couple other Parliament trees with him and Swamp Thing talking to him. I don't know, some weird, wild stuff. But Toru first appearing in 89 and named here, I guess, in 89, because I guess if he's Parliament of the Trees, they kind of showed up as a group earlier, but not all of them had a name or identity. So this is kind of where we identify this tree of knowledge as Toru. And this book hasn't sold lately, but there's copies listed. They're only $4 to $5. So again, it's a very cheap copy. This is part of that Swamp Thing run that you'll find in those cheap boxes, in those dollar bins. So it's something to keep an eye out for fun if you want to go and look for that first appearance. Because again, it's not one of the keys. It's not John Constantine's first or anything like that. So this is part of that run that you could find usually for cheap. Now, staying with DC, we're going to go check out Supergirl this week, as we had a lot of fun, weird characters with Princess Shark and whole Thanksgiving theme going on here. A lot of the pets showing up as well, but we're not going to focus in on them. First up, we're going to talk about a character I know I've covered her on this show before, but it doesn't hurt to remind you because she's been playing a strong role here as a side character, supporting character in Supergirl, and that's Lena Luthor, the second one. Because there's two that showed up and this whole thing, but this is the second Lena Luthor, Lex's daughter. So yeah, this is the one we're going to look at here, being all angsty and whatnot. But yeah, she's still an interesting character and part of the crew. And she first showed up back in what was this, No, Superman, regular Superman. So Superman 131 back in 1997 as a baby. Yes, baby spec. Because I told you, we've covered this book before, but doesn't hurt to remind you. And for people who might have missed that show, they don't know that, yeah, Lena Luthor right here showing up, and he even names her here. The world will be yours. And Lexi holding her as a baby. And then she grows up over time, yada, yada, yada. But with that, this book is her first, not very expensive. You can still find this Superman book for anywhere for best offer accepted on $2. So somebody paid less than $1.99, and then somebody else paid $10 for one of these. Meanwhile, asking prices are $2.50, $3, or up to $10. So it's kind of a wide range. You're not going to get rich finding it, obviously, but it's still a fun first if you want to go and find one. You find it in a dollar bin, grab it, tuck it away in a box. You never know what may happen. But that's our first character that I wanted to focus in on, Supergirl. But again, I know it's a repeat, so I got somebody new to talk about. And here at the table, we also have a very quick appearance of Cassie Sandsmark, Wonder Girl. We can tell by the little red star. They don't name her in here. We just have to assume, because we know our friends and the super friends and whatnot, by her little earrings and the rest of her gear and get up. So that would be Cassie. And here we go. See, with the red star earrings, that's kind of a signature look for her. She is one of the Wonder Girls, and she first appeared here in Wonder Woman 105 back in 1995. Yeah, that's her on the cover. And no, it looks like Zach Morris, but it's not. That's Cassie. And yeah, she first shows up here in this John Byrne book, but also inside the book. She's not only just on the cover, she is inside the book as well, part of the story. And yeah, has that crazy baggy 90s style. And yes, she does kind of look like Zach Morris a little bit, or maybe Parker Lewis. From Parker Lewis Can't Lose. I don't know. Point being, that's her though. And this book is one that I always grabbed. I found this thing so many times in dollar bins, and I just had almost like a a nervous tick, like I had to buy it every time. And it was only like a $5 book, and it still kind of is only in that kind of range, but still, every time I see it, I go, Wonder Woman 105, $1, sure. As long as it's not ripped up, like, yeah, I end up buying it. And yes, copies could sell for as cheap as $1 or $5 to $7. Asking prices are only about $5 to $7. So it's not a pricey first. She had her day in the sun. I don't know if her profile is going to get as high as it once was. Because remember when we had the Teen Titans and you had Connor and Tim Drake, Robin, like that run of Teen Titans, which I very much enjoyed by Jeff Johns. That was kind of her heyday. I don't know if we're going to get back to that, but you never know. You never know. Point being, it's still a cheap first you can find in those cheap boxes, and I've found it plenty of times. With that, staying one more in DC, and that is going to be Batman Static Beyond. So it's Batman Beyond and Static in this future Batman Beyond universe, Elseworlds Tale, etc. So inside this book, we've actually got a plethora of characters that we can take a look at, and we'll just look at them all from this one shot here because most of them are here. We're not going to talk about Big Barda because Big Barda and her first goes back New Gods and I'm sorry, Mr. Miracle and all that. It's expensive, so you're not going to find Big Bardas first, but we could probably find these three here. So we're going to start off with Warhawk and work our way around. So character of Warhawk is a animated series kind of introduction. So in Batman Beyond, etc. So that's where we would have found him. But in the comics, he first showed up in Batman Beyond number 21 from May of 2001. And this was Enter the Justice League Unlimited. So this was the future Justice League in the Batman Beyond universe kind of showing up for the first time. And this is a book that people actually go and look for and hunt. It actually is worth a couple of bucks. Again, you're not going to get rich. And there he is, Warhawk. But it's worth finding if you want to go digging these Batman Beyond books. So issue 21, this one could sell for, well, it could sell for $1. It could sell for $4, but somebody paid $48 for one of these. Maybe there was a best offer. I'm not seeing it. But point being, yes, there are cheap copies that have sold, and then what seemingly is a much larger sale. But by and large, most of the listings aren't very cheap. There are more in the $15 to kind of $20 range, as you can see there. I mean, $13, $14, $18, that kind of range, which isn't bad if you can find, a book in the dollar bin and it's worth, you can get $15 to $18 for it. I know people aren't paying that exactly right now, but you never know. Those were old sales from September as well. So who knows what could happen in the future, especially with this new title just rolled out. Maybe more people get excited and remember their old Justice League Unlimited future Batman Beyond versions. I don't know. But that is Warhawk, not only on the cover, but you saw him inside the guts of the book too. Moving down the line of these characters, we also got the Flash. So the Flash of the future. And that is this girl right here, Danica Williams, showing up there. That is the Flash in the Batman Beyond universe. And she first shows up here kind of not yet in costume, but this is also a pretty cool cover, mind you, in Batman Beyond Unlimited number 13 in 2013. So inside this story, we do see the future old Flash, and we can see here that she is obviously his protege, if you will, but we don't see her yet in costume. We do see kind of a hints of her being involved, but again, being the Flash and speeding through, you don't get a good look at her in costume in this book, but that is her, and this would be her first, and this is a book you can find out there. Again, cool cover too. So with that, it's $7 to $10, and copies listed are $5 to $10. So $5 to $10 seems pretty standard for this $3.99 cover price book. It's got a cool cover, got a character first. You could do a lot worse if you're out there digging for stuff. So I don't know. I keep an eye out for it. And then moving down the line, again, skipping Big Barda, Micron is back there as well. Yes, he's kind of hidden by her seat, but he's also inside the rest of the book. I just went with this one picture because it kind of covered all three. And Micron is another TV first character, but he did get some appearances in some of the books. So he does go back to those the Batman the animated series, Justice League Unlimited, Superman era of television, and we first saw him in comics back in Superman Adventures number 64. Right near the end. This series ended, I think, at 66. So right near the end, this is going to be a toughie to find as the print run was kind of dwindling, and for that reason is also worth a couple extra bucks, I think, more so than the Micron appearance. But you still get Micron's first in here from December of 2001. So I would keep an eye out for it. Granted, he's just shown in like a huge mural kind of like spot. He doesn't play a role in this book at all. He's just kind of there because he was on the show, kind of thing. But that's him in comics, and that would technically be his first. But like I said, this book already does all right for itself for what it is. Copies selling for 15, $25. Copies listed for 15, $30. So if you can find a Superman Adventures 64, even for that reason of being late run Superman animated series coming near the end, this book does all right. So Batman Beyond appearance in it. That's kind of the whole story here. You got Batman Beyond teaming up with Superman. And like I said, that Micron thing was just kind of like a little back thing. But with that, those are our DC books. But before we wrap up the show, I want to take a minute and remind any of you out there who need supplies, use my code RENA10 for 10% off your BCW order. Get your supplies, your bags, your boards, your long boxes, your short boxes, CGC boxes, top loaders, pages for your cards, top loaders for your cards, basically anything to keep your comics and collectibles safe. You need supplies. You got to spend that money. You don't want to. You might as well save a few bucks using my code RENA10 for 10% off your entire order. You help out the channel, you get yourself a discount. You really got nothing to lose by doing so, since you got to buy those supplies anyway. So with that said, that out of the way, let's get to our last two books. I only got one Marvel book to talk about, and then we're going to hop over into the G.I. Joe universe for a second. But first up, our Marvel book of the week, Venom 251. So right here on the front of this cover is an oddball roller skating villain who doesn't seem very threatening, but yeah, it's a character that goes back a little ways and has made quite a few appearances over time, and that is Blue Streak right here. Yes, roller skating. Bank robbing roller skater, I guess. So cool. Cool. Blue streak. Anyway, there he is, and he goes back not a long way. Like, you would think this is like an 80s character. It's not. This only goes back to 2006. Heroes for Hire, #3, part of the Civil War event. Pretty cool cover. I hate how half of the cover is wasted on those Civil War era books, but they do actually have some quality art. It's just limited. With that said, inside the guts of this book, we are introduced to the character right over here, out of suit and then in his suit with these other crazy characters, King Size, Ferocia, Blue Streak, and Flame, whatever. Crazy, silly characters, but Blue Streak, there he is. You can't see that he's on roller skates, but that's his shtick. And this is not a pricey book. So as you can guess, this is a book you can find, you can go dig for. Yes, it could sell for $8 to $10. But meanwhile, there's plenty of copies listed for $3 to $5, and then some of those high asks up to $24. I don't know, but that's what's out there. So give it a look-see and get some random first appearances of some crazy villains we may or may not see again. I mean, who knew? Who was going to guess Blue Streak was going to show up in Venom this week? But he did. Now, with that said, that's the only book I decided to cover from Marvel. Only one that kind of jumped out and had anything kind of fun or interesting to talk about. And then we have G.I. Joe. So right here on the cover of G.I. Joe, Real American Hero 322, we do have a couple of the snow-themed Joes. So I decided to focus in on a couple of them since, yeah, that's kind of where we are. And we're going to start off first with our bearded friend, Snow Job. Yeah, great name, right? Snow Job. But there he is. That was Snow Job. He goes back in the olden times of Joe books back to G.I. Joe #11. Oh, I'm sorry, the date's wrong on that. I didn't get to update the date, but G.I. Joe #11, going back to the 80s. He is right there on the cover. But if you don't believe it, beyond that, he is inside the guts of the book right here. Snow Job, Gung Ho and Doc, keep your fire up. Like, cool. He's in the book. It's Snow Job. And this one does well. Also because there's a Destro cameo. It's kind of like a shaded kind of picture, silhouette, if you will. But it could sell for very cheap, $3.45, or pretty expensive, $55.88 at auction. Newsstand. It's not just because it's a newsstand. It was also, I guess, a higher grade copy, but still. And then you can look at asking prices. Yeah, a lot of them are around the $8, but then they could also be asking $30 for this book from 1984. Again, it's got first Airborne, first Doc, Snow Job, and I guess that cameo of Destro in there as well, which could be debated and whatever. I mean, it is what it is. Point being, I'm talking about it because of Snow Job, because I just can't get enough of saying Snow Job. But outside of him, we have another Joe Snow character in Frostbite. Yeah, Frostbite, who they seem to have decided to lean in, because I think he was from Alaska, and I'm maybe leaning in more towards his Eskimo heritage, because I think that's what they were kind of going with when they created him. We'll get to that in a minute. But Frostbite here has a convoluted comic appearance history, because many sources will point to this book here. G.I. Joe, Real American Hero 64. Cool cover. I mean, you got New School Cobra Commander, you got Serpentor, you got Baroness, all coming to a head here. 1987. Cool cover, mind you. Inside this book, there's no clear indication of frostbite. I read through it a couple of times, flipping through it. Only thing I can see is it must be him right here with the goggles. That's the closest I could find. Because most of the story was about Chuckles and another dude, and they were like sneaking around the base, and then meanwhile they were going on the Cobra side of things with a fake Cobra commander. I'm not going to get into the details of the book, but by and large, that I think is what they're pointing to as being the first appearance of Frostbite, unnamed, not even colored. Like he's a black and white background character that's barely drawn in there. But that's what some sources are pointing to. So if you want to count that, and that's why I'm showing you what's inside, so you can decide whether you want this book or not. It's still a $4 to $6 book. Asking prices $3 to $6. Not a pricey book, cool cover to go with it, and it's just a classic Joe book. Apart from that, I tried to read through the next few, didn't see him. One book pointed to him being in issue 67, but I couldn't find him clearly. So I kept going until 68, because at least in 68, I saw his name dropped. Before I saw him, there was a name drop of him being in a Snowcat with Duke, and then we get to see him later. So in issue 68, which is October of 87, this is when we actually see him, and he's driving the Snowcat. So, all right, at least we got that. And he says his name again. So we got Frostbite. There he is. He's driving the Snowcat. Cool. So if you like that as an actual appearance, you can count this as his first, and you can go look for this book, which again is only $1.25, $5, almost $10. $3, $6, $10. But that's kind of like all these G.I. Joe books. Depending on where you're going shopping, you can find them as cheap as like $1 or $2. They could be $5. They could be $10. It is what it is. I'm still trying to fill out my G.I. Joe collection of books. I still got to figure out which ones I need. But with that, there is Frostbite. But realistically, whether you count this or not, he actually first, before either of these comic book issues, whether he was way in the background of that 64, finally named in 68, you go back to December of the prior year inside G.I. Joe Order of Battle, which is a handbook that basically just gives character profiles. He's in here first. So in theory, or however you want to count it, this would be his first inside the guts of this book, as he got a whole profile as, Frostbite. And again, see, they're pointing to his birthplace, Alaska, yada, 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 and going with this whole thing. So there you go. That would realistically be his first, but not in story. So, I mean, we can make the arguments, we can debate, whatever, but it is what it is. Point being, it's another book for you to keep an eye out for. And this Order of Battle book has a whole bunch of character cards like that, just of all the different characters. It basically goes through Joe characters, A through like L. And it's a 4-issue series. You can find the whole series sell for $15. This one issue, $6.50. 3 out of the 4 for $7. Meanwhile, listings for issue 1 here are around $4 to $5. Again, not a pricey book, something you can find out there if you decide to go digging. So with that, they're just some fun books for you to go and dig for and hunt for and take a look at some extra materials. If you're reading your books this week, that kind of ties into that stuff. It's just what I like to do. So with that, I want to thank you all for the support of the channel and for checking out all the shows I put on here. I'm still having a hell of a lot of fun doing them. Hopefully you're enjoying them. And I'll see you later with some more content. All right.